Hello everyone. So today I'm going to do my presentation on the Vampire Diaries. Um, I'm going to focus solely on the first season of the show opposed to the entire show because there's a lot that goes into all of the 8 seasons and I felt like it was a little too much to try and condense that all into one PowerPoint. So I focus solely on the first season, and a lot of that revolves around the fact that there's a lot of good things that come from the first season. So what is the Vampire Diaries? So the Vampire Diaries is actually first started out as a book series. The first book was written in 1991 by L.J. Smith. The book series itself had multiple spin-offs, such as Stefan's Diaries, which I have a picture of in the top right-hand corner of like the little grid, and the originals. Um, the books aren't that popular anymore. A lot of people don't honestly know that they exist. A lot of people think it's just solely the TV show, which is not the case. The books are also really hard to find. I've read a few of the books, but they're not sold in like Barnes and Noble. I think you can only get like the first two books in Barnes and Noble, and then the rest you have to find on Amazon and stuff. They're more hard to find. But so the TV show itself was a TV show adaptation, and it was on the CW channel from 2009 to 2017. It had 8 seasons, and then the television show actually had two spin-offs, the originals, which lasted from 2013 to 2018, which followed the original vampire family, the Michelsons, and that were introduced in season 2 and season 3, and then Legacies, which is more of a spin-off of the originals, but it has a lot of elements from Vampire Diaries as well, and that follows Hope Michelson in the Salvatore boarding house. So there's a lot of themes within the first season of the Vampire Diaries. A lot of the main characters revolve around a lot of these themes. So the first theme that I want to talk about was addiction. This is something that is very prevalent in young adults. Not only could they be addicted to stuff themselves, whether it be drugs or alcohol or other things, but they could also see it from like a lot of adults that they're around or a lot of their peers. So I felt like it was a good thing to include in the presentation. So one of the main characters, Stefan Salvatore, he's kind of like one of the good guys in the show. He's Elena Gilbert's boyfriend. He is a vampire. So he's addicted to drinking human blood. So because of that, and because he has a really good heart and he doesn't want to hurt anybody, he forces himself to drink animal blood because once he drinks human blood, he can't stop, and he calls himself a ripper. Um, Basically, Stefan cannot handle drinking human blood. He will ultimately end up killing somebody, so he forces himself to drink animal blood to suppress like the hunger. That way, he doesn't kill anybody. And then the other two characters that deal with addiction are Jeremy Gilbert and Vicky Donovan. Um, Both of them are addicted to drugs and alcohol. Jeremy has even dealt drugs to Vicky. It's hinted at in the show that before like the show started, they had like a summer fling together, and Jeremy was dealing drugs to Vicky a lot, and they had like their little fling, and Vicky claims it was just because of the drugs, but Jeremy actually does love Vicky. Um, and then Jeremy does drugs to deal with the grief of his parents. I'll talk about that more in depth in the next few slides, but him and Vicky both deal with a lot of loss from their parents. Vicky's parents abandoned her and her younger brother Matt, whereas Jeremy's parents died in a car accident, very abruptly. So he deals with a lot of grief, and it forces him to cope, and neither of them cope in good ways. They both cope using drugs and alcohol, and I think that's something that the show does a really good job portraying, and it shows like the negative effects of doing that, which I think is important for young adult audiences to hear and to see. So the next thing is suicide. This is a very heavy topic, but it is one that is very important for young adult audiences to see and to know about. So Jeremy Gilbert does attempt to commit suicide on the season finale. He feels like an outsider compared to everybody else. He doesn't deal with his grief well. After Vicky's death, in one of the earlier episodes of the season, Elena has Damon compel away all of Jeremy's bad memories, but then Jeremy finds out, and it really takes a toll on him. He ends up getting close with this girl named Anna. Anna is a vampire. She's a vampire from 1864, along with Damon and Stefan. And she knows that Jeremy wants to turn. So in the last episode, she does give him a vial of her blood to hopefully, if he wanted to turn, he would turn and they could live together forever. Unfortunately, Anna does die in the season finale, but Jeremy does not know that at that point. He doesn't find out until the season 2 premiere. Um, but so Jeremy takes a bunch of Elena's pain pills that she had from the car accident, um, because he wants to turn into a vampire so he can turn his humanity switch off. Because in the show, vampires can switch their humanity switches off to where they have no emotion. So he wanted to be emotionless so he could live out the rest of his life without emotions. He talks to Damon about this a lot, and Damon does claim that it's easier. So Jeremy wants to take the easy route out and just not have grief and not have the feeling of being an outsider anymore. So here we go into a lot of the characters in the show deal with loss and grief. I feel like it's one of the main themes of the show, like even throughout all of the seasons, is loss and grief. So the first pair that really have loss and grief is Elena and Jeremy Gilbert. They both lose their parents in a car crash. Elena was actually in the car and she was the only one that survived. The only reason she did survive is because before she knew Stefan and before they had their fling together, he did save her because her dad told him to save her. So she did lose both of her parents. And the thing I like about the show is it shows how everybody grieves in different ways. So Elena disassociates with her friends and her activities. She doesn't feel like that she's the same person anymore, and she struggles to find excitement in her life. And I think that's why when she learns about the vampires, she's very hesitant at first, but then she's all in because it brings some new joy and some new purpose to her life. Whereas Jeremy turns to drugs and alcohol to grieve his parents, and he also starts doing really bad in school. His grades start failing. He's not showing up to class, but that's before Damon compels him and makes him become a better student. It just shows how different they both grieve. Whereas Matt and Vicky Donovan were both abandoned by their mother and father. Matt holds in his pain. He doesn't talk about it very often. Whereas Vicky is like Jeremy and turned to drugs and alcohol to grieve. Her and Matt are both seen as the trash of the town. And Vicky deals with that a lot too when she starts to date the mayor's son, Tyler Lockwood. So then we also have the idea of revenge. Revenge was something that I didn't know I was going to put in there, but I feel like it's in a lot of young adult novels. Young teens, when they're handling their emotions, they might want to get revenge on a bully or possibly an older adult figure that, has done them wrong. So I figured this was a good thing to put in here. In the first season, there's the tomb vampires who want to get revenge on the founding families for locking them up in 1864. This whole idea of the revenge isn't as prominent, but it leads up to the big season finale. So Damon Salvatore is one of the main characters in the show, and he is all about revenge. He wants to get revenge on a lot of people because he feels like a lot of people did him wrong, but the main person he wants to get revenge on is Stefan, which is his brother. He promised Stefan an eternity of misery, and that was his quote from episode 1. 35 minutes and then 38 seconds. He wants to get revenge on Stefan because Stefan made him turn into a vampire in 1864, and then Stefan abandoned him because when they first became vampires, Damon was very against drinking human blood, and he was very against killing people, whereas Stefan was all for it because Stefan was a ripper. And then they kind of switched after Damon turned his humanity off, and he kind of became a killer because he wanted to get revenge on Stefan. So to come to Mystic Falls and to kill people to make Stefan's life hell. So the big one in this season that I found was sexual abuse and consent. So within the first few episodes, Damon Salvatore and Caroline Forbes have this relationship. It's a very short-lived relationship. It's more of a fling. Damon uses Caroline to kind of infiltrate the town because she is the sheriff's daughter and she has a lot of knowledge on the town and who and what's going on. So Damon compelled Caroline during the relationship. So compelling in the Vampire Diaries is mind control. A vampire can make a human do whatever they want as long as they're not on vervain. If they're on vervain or they are a vampire, then they cannot be compelled. Or if they're a witch, that's also the other thing. But Caroline's just a human at this point. So he forced her to let him feed on her and do a lot of his dirty work. So she had to like in the picture, he compelled her to bring her to the Founders Council ball with him. and he mind controls her throughout a lot of their relationships. So it raises the issue of whether or not she truly gave consent to be in a sexual relationship with him. While she was attracted to him before he started to compel her, it raises the issue of did she really want to have sex with him, or like did she really want to be in a relationship with him? Um, there's a lot that revolves around that, and I think it's something that's very important for young adult audiences to see the issue of consent, because it's this also could go around with like a toxic relationship and like an abusive relationship, because that's all what this was. And I think it's important for them to see this and to know that this is not okay. So now we're at the so what question. So why do we care? Why should we watch the show? Why should this be allowed for young audiences? Because a lot of people think this is for older audiences, but most of the characters, especially in the first few seasons, are in high school. So I think it raises really good discussions for young adult audiences. Um, like I said previously, like the idea of consent, like that's very important, because with young adults, like they're going through their first relationships and they're going through their first loves and they're encountering sexual activities for the first time. So I think it's very important for them to see things like that. The idea of grief and addiction is also something that, young adult audiences could face, especially the addiction where it's like they could be starting to party more and do drugs and do alcohol, so it's something for them to see. Um, and then also like the idea of grief, because everybody's going to go through grief at some point in their life, and if someone has to go through that at such a young age, it's a good thing for them to see how different people are coping with their grief and how maybe not to do it versus how to do it. Maybe they want to see Jeremy Gilbert, who has become a drug addict, and steer away from that because they're like, oh, like he started doing really bad in school, I don't want to do that. So there's a lot of things here that it raises good discussions with, um, other than this, like the whole supernatural aspect of it, because it's a very interesting show, and I think it has a lot of good qualities to it. So I want to thank you guys for listening to my presentation. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you guys have any more questions, you can just contact me under the Moodle forum post. I'd love to hear your responses and hear some of your questions or comments about it. So yeah, thank you guys so much, and yeah.